Well, welcome everyone to this episode of the Generation Podcast. We're now travelling through Series 2 of the podcast, and today I'm your host, Martin Paterson. I'm really delighted to introduce you to Dr. Rico Villanueva, who is joining us today. And just to give you a little bit of background to Rico, Rico currently teaches at a number of seminaries across the Philippines and is also the Scholar, Care Coordinator and Regional Commissioning Editor in Asia for the Langham Partnership. That's quite a wonderful title that Rico has. He's also the author of a number of books. One particular that I want to highlight is It's Okay to Not Be Okay. And he's contributed a couple of commentaries to the really excellent Asia Bible commentary series in the Psalms and in the Book of Lamentations. So after that short intro, let me just welcome Rico to the podcast. Rico, it's great to have you with us, and thank you for taking the time to join us.
Thank you, Martin, and hello, everyone. This is a great opportunity and a privilege for me to be invited in this podcast, and hope we can have a wonderful time of sharing together, Martin. Thank you. And by the way, greetings from Manila, Philippines. We say, I don't know what time it is now, but we would just say mabuhay, or be alive, or that's how we greet it.
That's wonderful.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's currently time of recording. It's currently around about 8 a.m. here, so I'm waking up into the world. So thank you for greeting us this morning. Just if you could, Rico, it would be really great if you could tell us a little bit about yourself. You're in Manila at present. Is that where you've grown up? Could you just give us a bit of a background, maybe what else it is that you do? Explain maybe a little bit of the titles that we were chatting about there, and maybe family connections.
Yeah, okay. So my name is Rico Villanueva. It's a Spanish name, obviously, Rico, which means rich in Spanish, or delicious even. We have been under the Spaniards for more than 300 years, since 1521. So we just remembered the 500 years of colonization. The 500 years of the colonization by the Spaniards. So that's where I come from, Philippines. I currently work as full-time with Langham Publishing, as mentioned by Martin. We wanted in Langham Publications to give voice to majority world scholars, people in Asia, Africa, Latin America, whose voices sometimes do not get heard or ignored, sad to say, in some places. So my role is as regional commissioning editor in Asia is to encourage Filipino, Chinese, Asian writers, Indian, everywhere, through our various projects, which includes the Asia Bible Commentary series, which Martin mentioned. This is a multi-volume commentary of each of each book in the Bible. So I've written the one on Book of Psalms and Lamentations. What makes this commentary unique is that it is pastoral, but also contextual in Asia. So we use our own stories, even the manner, our own history in trying to interpret the text and apply the text. So it might also interest people in other culture to look at these different ways of looking at the text and interpreting it.
I was going to say,
I
can just drop in here. Last year it's now 2022, 2 years ago, during lockdown, our church was doing a series in the Book of James, and one of the commentaries I used a lot during that series was the Asia Bible commentary on the book. It was super. It was a really helpful tool to engage and just see things from a different perspective, and maybe highlight some things, particularly in a book like James, where it's
Yeah.
so much to do with community and the dynamics that happen within community. And it was really excellent. So I can't recommend the series highly enough. I think that it's a super resource for the church. And I'm really grateful for your input in helping to coordinate that.
Thank you. Yes. I also teach in s- uh, different institutions here. One is the Asia Graduate School of Theology, which trains uh, postgraduate, until doctoral studies. So I supervised one Indonesian scholar, Langham Scholar, who her name is Dwi, who work on a comparative analysis of the lament psalms and the lament in Quran. Indonesia, as you know, is the biggest uh, Islamic country in the world, and so these are the kinds of studies we do. I mean, here, how do you compare, the Bible and then the realities, like religion of Islam? So I I kind of I enjoy that in some way because of the contribution of the Bible to different cultures as well, and vice versa. So we learn from each other as well. I also teach in a Catholic university, Ateneo de Manila, which is run by the Jesuit. Uh, so there's a very good relationship between the Protestants and the Catholics in some areas here. So it's good. So although I'm not a Catholic, they invited me to teach the Psalms. They came to know that I did my study on the Psalms. So, the Catholics are singing, reciting the Psalms almost every day, and here is a Protestant, being asked to teach them. So it's a privilege as well, a learning. And they sometimes tell me that although they keep on repeating the Psalms, they it's something new for them to really try to interpret it, like how Protestants do, and so it's also good to contribute in that sense.
Thanks, Rico, for giving us a bit of a picture of what you're involved with at present. Do you have family at all?
Yes. Oh, yeah. My wife is Rosemary, and we have two grown-up children. The first, my son is Jeremiah Emir, and then my daughter is Faye.
Nice.
So
That's lovely. You've been talking around about you've been mentioning Lamentations, Psalms, thoughts around about lament. I think that's where we're going to spend a bit of our time for the podcast today. You've studied the Psalms particularly, and Lamentations. What led you to that section of God's Word, to commit yourself to deeper study, deeper thinking in the Psalms, Lamentations, and that theme of lament? What is it that led you towards taking the time out? Because to do further studies requires a degree of commitment to that, because it takes a long time, and a whole host of other things that it takes up. What was it particularly that made you think, yeah, this is what I need to be thinking about and seeking to apply to the church?
There are two things that drew me to the lament or the lament psalms. First is my experience in the ministry. I noticed that in the church, although we continue to experience a lot of suffering. We experience, by the way, typhoons a lot here. There are about at least 20 typhoons that comes, land in the Philippines. Recently, we just had a terrible, just last Christmas. And but one of the things that I noticed in the church is that in spite of all of these, we only sing happy songs all the time, and so I started to ask why. Is there a room for our suffering, our questions, our pain, and how do we express this? Because sometimes the church tends to be only focus on the positive. All the songs are happy. The preaching is for the victorious. And we make it sure that our worship services end on a peak. Like a happy note, like a fiesta. So as I pray, the Lord led me somehow to the Psalms, and I found that in our Bibles actually we have this rich resource of not only praises. There are lots of praises and thanksgiving in the Psalms, but interestingly, there are more what's so-called lament psalms, individual laments and communal laments in the Psalter more than the praise and thanksgiving together. So that in itself is a powerful statement you know of of who God is. That God is a God not only when we are rejoicing or when we are okay, but also when we are not okay, and also tells us where people are. Because like right now, I mean, in the midst of the pandemic. But unfortunately, the church only has sometimes room for those, only happy things. So that actually led me to the lament. So that's the first one. And the second is my own personal experience of depression. So Martin, I had what an experience of depression, which I didn't know I had before I went to the UK. I mean, I was not diagnosed here, but it was when I finished my PhD in England that my depression really got worse. That I needed to see a psychiatrist there. But even before that, here I really realized that I had that. This even since during my early 20s, maybe, or before that. And so I think that also drew me to psalms like Psalm 88, the darkest psalm. That for the first time I felt that I am not alone. Because Psalm 88 says, "I am a man with no strength," and the word "man" there in Hebrews gave her a hero, a strong man, and yet he has no strength. And I felt that, after my PhD, I'm supposed to be happy, victorious, but where is the strength? And so those two things. So even before I went to England, I already knew what my research topic will be on when I started my PhD. It will be on the Psalms of Lament. So that's what I did. From 2004 to 2007, I wrote a dissertation, which is now published. The title of the book is "The Uncertainty of a Hearing: A Study of the Sudden Change of Mood from in the Lament Psalms." Mhm.
Can I just say first, before we got into anything else, thank you for being really honest about your own story, your own journey, because I think that it's something that will resonate with a lot of people who are listening, and maybe will help to give voice to those challenges they're experiencing in life. I was reading through your book, "It's Okay to Not Be Okay," and the first point you drew out, I think, can be summed up in this little phrase, where you say, "Because there is no room in the church for our negative experiences, we do not know how to respond when tragic events occur."
Yeah.
I found that really helpful, because in some ways I think what you're saying is, if we're not actually engaging with the depths and the fullness of human experience in the times where maybe we are in a bit more of a positive or better place, and we're not thinking those things through at that point, then when the challenges do come, do we
Yeah.
actually have a theology big enough? Do we have a concept and a view of God which is big enough to realize, no, he's not
Mm.
completely detached or distant from us in this, even though it may feel it, and
Yeah.
that may be our experience in that moment. That when those difficult days come, if we've not been thinking these things through and actually engaging with that in our public worship and our private worship, then
Yeah.
when difficulties come, will we have the right tools there, the right worldview to interact with that? I thought that was a really excellent summation
Thank you. Mm.
of part of the challenge that we face, because I
Mm.
think that throughout the world, regardless where we find ourselves, this can be the challenge. Is that we've got to
Mm.
be the strong man or the strong person who keeps a good face on things, when actually that might not be the reality that we're living through at that time. So yeah, thank you for just sharing a little bit about yourself there and being
Yeah. Thank you, and you're welcome as well. Privilege for me, and I think the word you mentioned about a challenge, that this situation around the world now poses a challenge. But how do we respond? We can, I mean, the church or everyone, and every individual can respond to the pandemic or the situation the same way that we did before. But that won't work, isn't it? I mean, this is a different situation, and we we're still, I mean, 2 years on to this pandemic, we're still trying to figure out how what to do. Where's the normal? But I think this is where the lament comes in. I think, and if there's a time when we we can learn this the message of the lament, it is in the midst of in right now. But I also notice a tendency for some people to continue to ignore it, to live, to escape, keep on escaping, so they don't go deeper, because it's scary. It can be scary down there. But I think one of the reasons why we do not reach the height is because we do not, go deeper, the depths. Yeah. There's shallowness in our world today, everywhere, including the church sometimes, because we have not been to the depths, or we do not know how to go to the depths. And the lament psalms, the lament in the Bible, including the lamentations, through the Holy Spirit, can, I think, help us. And the Lord has given us these laments as our companion, if I may say, grace from the Lord.
Mm. If it's okay, can we maybe think a little bit about the book of Lamentations,
Oh, sure. Yeah. Mhm.
if with you, Rico, because I think, kind of following on from what you just said, it would probably be fair to say that as a book in the Old Testament, it's one that the church, certainly in my experience in Scotland and the UK, it's not something that we tend to access very often. It's not a book that you would tend to hear people preach on regularly, or even
Mhm.
interact with. And if people do, it's usually the wonderful high point in the centre in chapter 3, where we hear about God's faithfulness. It's new every morning. But all around about that, things are not how the author would want them to be. It is not. It's not a place where you would necessarily want to enter into.
Yeah.
What do you think? What do you think we can be learning from a book like Lamentations, more
Mm.
generally?
Yeah, I mean, it's unfortunate that even Christians are not aware of the Book of Lamentations, and if they are aware, it's mostly the positive bit, like Lamentations 3:22 to 22, which we sing, like this, great is thy faithfulness, great is morning by morning your mercies I see, and that's also a favorite hymn here.
Mm,
Great is thy faithfulness, but uh, we don't pay attention to the surrounding verses,
mm,
and even the ending of the book. Actually, the chapter on which the famous hymn was taken begins with a lament, So that's from verses 1 to 20 or 21, and then moves to him, like, great is thy faithfulness. But after that, you know, there there is a series of exhortation, don't complain, and so on. But then it ends with a communal lament again, yeah, like, so you have this movement from lament to him and then back again, which presents the reality of life, isn't it? I mean, life is sometimes and often like that. You begin with lament and then there's solution, but then you ended up with a tension. So there's a tension, and the book itself ends with a question with no resolution. In fact, it's the only book in the whole Old Testament that does not end with any kind of positive or light or resolution. It's end with a question. Unless he says how long or why. Uh, can we just quote that from that Lamentations 5:20 to 22? I have to review again. It says in Lamentations, this is the very last verses in this book, which says, why do you forget us? You see, that's the question in verse 20. 21 is, restore us, O Lord, that we may be restored. Renew our days, and this is the ending here. You have utterly rejected us, and you remain exceedingly angry with us. Period.
Yeah.
So there's, unless you're really angry. So there's even a question mark, a lot of uncertainty. So what can we learn from this book? First of all, this is where a lot of people are now, in this place of no answer, uncertainty, tragic, if you may, And so in this place, you meet this God, I mean, so that this is a very special place because this is where a lot of people are now. And that's the beauty of the Bible, it has space for these kinds of experience. But secondly, this is also important because for a long time the church has been a church that is too triumphalistic, as it is as if they have all the answers only, well, I mean, it's true that Christ is the answer and so on, but you go through life as well where you look for answers, you open your Bibles, you pray, you ask people, and there's really no answer. And so I find this a very special place to be, yeah, especially during this time.
Yeah, I think you're spot on, Rico. I think that it actually it aids us as we serve with God in His mission, because it actually reminds us of the reality not only which we are experiencing, but also of the wider world or the wider community with which we're part of. That people will be feeling these things. They will be experiencing some of these maybe dark realities, where they are where they are weighed down, and it gives us a place where we can actually point people to meet with God. And in many ways, it might sound a bit strange, but maybe something like the Book of Lamentations or some of the lament psalms are actually excellent evangelistic texts for the 21st century.
Kitamori, a Japanese theologian, said, the gospel of God was revealed to me in the pain, the pain of God. Kitamori, one of the theologians, Japanese theologians. So it's mostly in the pain, because that's where most people are, and then you meet God there. So that's very interesting, I mean, the theology of the pain of God and the pain of the people of God, that sums up the experiences of the people now and even before, I think. So I was just struck by that theologian Kitamori. His popular book is The Pain of God. That's the title of the theology of the pain of God. That's the title of the book, by the way. And studying the lament, in my own Philippine context, as a Filipino in Asia around me, I realized that it's the same message, and that's where the modern church has gone wrong, because they wanted to present only a Christianity which is like so sweet, that if you receive Jesus, you'll have a happy life all the time, victory, wow, morning by morning, blessing and so on. But Lamentation speaks about hunger, of
Mm.
mothers even eating their very you their children. That's how tragic the situation has been. But that song, "Great Is Thy Faithfulness," doesn't even mention about that. The hunger, the questions, the agony, the pain, the uncertainty. And so when our Christianity only gives room for these positive things, that's where we get into trouble, isn't it? When suddenly this pandemic out of nowhere comes in, how do we deal with it? How do we even respond? What should we say? We don't say anything. That's the problem.
Well,
So we are really in a big trouble as a church, I think, if I may speak from my own experience, because we haven't really learned about this. We have lost it, I think, this very rich tradition. So if you notice, Martin, I'm preaching now.
oh
so
no, go for it.
so because it's really my passion, because we really need this.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
I would agree. I think, as I was thinking about, I was preparing for chatting with you, Rico. I was thinking through these things, spend some time reading through Lamentations. I think as well, context really plays into this, particularly in somewhere like the UK. We've got a pretty cushy number. We've got quite a nice environment. Things
Yeah.
don't really go wrong very often in the UK. There is relative political
Yeah.
stability, economic stability, social stability. We have freedoms which we are really grateful to the Lord for. And then something like what's happened over the last 2 years comes, and
Mm.
you know what do we do? We found it hard, I think, to
Yeah.
answer that and to engage with what is it that the Lord is teaching us through that. So, yeah, I think where we find ourselves contextually can also be a big factor in engaging with this aspect of real
Yes.
life, which God seeks to meet with us in. If you could, Rico, would it be possible? Could you maybe just touch on a little bit of what has been the sort of church's response maybe to the pandemic within the Philippines? What's that maybe looked like a little bit in your context? Because it would be helpful for us to learn from you
Yeah.
in that.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, particularly in my context, the pandemic has not been really easy, difficult, and what made it more difficult is a political instability, and then that some of you may be aware that we have a president who curses a lot rather than help sometimes, and you don't lament. It's dangerous to ask a question. If you question his authority, he put into prison the chief justice, a senator, and how much more of an ordinary individual, and so killings continued. His war on drugs, even in spite of the lockdowns. So the energy that's supposed to be exerted on bringing the necessary, medicines, food or whatever, is sometimes or many times I feel is devoted to that. And so the church also struggled in that way. First, all the all the churches have to meet online, and sometimes in the midst of all of these, unfortunately, some of the members in the churches are also not only silent, but even some of the pastors are even supportive of the kind of the president that we have. So the problem of justice is also, which is a big thing in the lament psalms. In Psalm 10, for example, Psalm 10, verse 1, the psalmist is crying to God, Lord, why do you stand far off, in times of, trouble, you know, when the wicked, people, when the boastful, um, tramples on the poor and the needy, why do you continue to be silent? So the concern for justice, and I think that's what we miss as a church. And we do some we do some help in terms of giving food to the needy and so on. But I think more is needed in terms of engagement
Mm.
with the social injustice in our land through the Psalms of Lament again and the prophetic literature. Yeah.
Thanks for sharing a little bit about where things are at. I was just reading an article. It was just talking about the president and recent moves to put people in prison who are unvaccinated. I think was the latest thing that I was reading from just a
Yeah.
couple of days ago. So yeah, it is a challenging context, but we're
Yes.
grateful to the Lord for brothers and sisters like yourself, Rico, who are seeking to point and lead people to Christ.
Hmm.
I think that time is pretty much gone. I could talk to you for a long time and eat your time up right into the evening, Rico. I think that we're starting to come into land now. I just want to let people know that you'll be coming over to the UK in March, Lord willing, if
Yes.
everything remains open and
I
free.
hope so.
As we are all aware, who knows what the future holds.
Yeah, yeah.
But
Back in last year, we were in the red list of the UK, so I cannot. But back in November, they lifted that, So I hope they don't put us again in that list, so I can go there.
we're looking forward to having you over here in the UK. You'll be speaking at the OMF National Conference, which is coming up the 11th to the 13th of March, which is in Swanwick. And then you're coming up the week after that, the 15th and the 16th of March, to Scotland. And
Yes.
going to be spending some time with us cheery people up here in the north.
Great. Looking forward to that.
Yeah, we're looking forward to having you with us. So Rico will be with us in Edinburgh on the 15th of March and the 16th of March through in Glasgow. So keep those dates free if you're in and around about Scotland at that time, and we'll have more details about the events, locations, times, etc. In the coming weeks. But yeah, Rico will be coming up to share with us and just to give us a little bit more of a picture and maybe discuss some more of what we've been talking about today. Rico, can I just say thank you once again for taking the time. It's been a real privilege and pleasure to spend time with you today. And thank you for opening up about your own life and your own experiences and the ways that the Lord has been leading you to think through and understand His Word and apply it for the church. I'll put a link to the books that Rico is author of in the show notes, so you can follow those up. It's okay not to be okay, and his commentaries in the Asia Bible Commentary series on the Psalms and Lamentations. So
there's also, by the way, Martin, thank you. Also, there's also a book I wrote in last year, 2020. I mean,
yeah.
Lord, I'm depressed. That's the title. It can be, I think, a Kindle version, but that's the title, Lord, I'm Distressed, which is the story of my depression
Okay.
and how the lament psalms help me through that. So you might, if you may be interested, it's just a small book. You
Oh,
can,
that's
yeah.
excellent, Rico. Sorry for missing that out.
It's all right. It's not by Langham. It's by a local publisher here in the UK, but it's available,
Yeah.
internationally as well. Yeah.
When you're
Thank you.
such a prolific author, it's hard to keep up with where things
No,
are.
no. Yeah.
No,
Thank you again.
Yeah, thank you once again, brother. Appreciate that. And please do follow up and engage with some of these books if you've got the time. Thank you, Rico. Blessings to you for the rest of the day. And
pleasure.
Thank you to everyone who's joined us listening in today. It's been great to have your company. And I really do hope that this helps you to engage with the God who is present, even when it feels like he's not. And maybe it's worth just taking the time to pause after this, to speak with God, and maybe to reach out to somebody that you know is a believer, a Christian, someone who knows Jesus, and take the time to interact and engage with the God who is present. So thank you again, Rico. Thank you everyone for listening, and I'll sign off this episode of the Generation Podcast. Thank you.